Good evening. On behalf of Lone Tree City Council, welcome and thank you for joining us for our Mapping the Future Town Hall. I am Mayor Jackie Millet, honored to be serving in my 6th year as your mayor. Lone Tree has been my hometown for 20 years. I've never lived anywhere longer, and my husband and I feel very blessed to have raised our wonderful children in this amazing city. I've been involved in our local government for 17 years, initially serving on the Planning Commission before 8 years on council as a council member and then mayor pro tem, and then, as I mentioned, 6 years as mayor. I am a registered civil engineer, as a side note, and with a keen interest in problem solving, which is probably what brought me to local government. Joining me this evening are my dedicated partners on the Lone Tree City Council, Mayor pro tem Kathy Brunick, and council members Wynn Shaw, Jay Carpenter, and Mike Anderson. We very much appreciate you taking the time this evening to engage in this important conversation about the city's fiscal future. Mapping Our Future has been a robust community engagement initiative designed to educate and solicit resident and business feedback about the city's financial projections. Tonight, you'll hear from me and members of the city's executive team about the challenges facing our community, options to resolve those issues, and information about potential solutions. But first, I'd like to introduce our moderator for this evening, Bazi Kanani. She is a longtime Colorado resident who spent nearly a decade working as a journalist in the metro area. Bazi is lending her expertise as a moderator and a journalist to help ensure our residents get their questions asked and answered. Bazi, I'll turn it to you now.
Thank you, Mayor Millet. Well, like many who live in the metro area, I have spent a good amount of time as a visitor and a shopper in Lone Tree, so I am pleased to join you and your residents here tonight. First, let's take a brief look, for those who are joining us, at our agenda and at other city leaders who are joining us for this discussion. So Lone Tree's Deputy City Manager, who was also the Finance Director for many years, Kristen Baumgartner, will run us through some of the numbers, give us an overview of what is happening with the City of Lone Tree's budget and projections for the future. And then we'll hear again from Mayor Millet. She will share a bit more perspective on those numbers and is also going to talk about the proposed solution to the city's declining retail sales revenue. And as residents consider a solution, they do need information about what might be affected. So we will hear a few thoughts from your police chief, Kirk Wilson, and from Lone Tree's city manager, Seth Hoffman. And finally, we'll have some time for your questions. You can submit your questions in the box you see just below where you're seeing this video. Type in your name, your question, and hit submit. And if you're joining us on the phone, you can go online, cityoflonetree.com/townhall. Again, that is cityoflonetree.com/townhall. You'll see the video come up right there, and you can submit your questions there. So let's go over first to Kristen with some information about the budget. Kristen?
Thanks for this opportunity to share a little bit about the city's financial picture and our budget details for the city. As mentioned, I have worked for the city for over 14 years. First as a consultant, I am a certified public accountant, then for 6 years as the city's first finance director, and now I'm privileged enough to be the deputy city manager for the last 2 years. I've always been involved in the city's finances and am privileged to be working in such a great community. And one of my favorite parts of working with this community are the great residents that I get to work with each day. So first, we're going to dive into the financial details, and we're going to look at how the city's revenue is comprised. Next slide, please. So the city's revenue budget, which you're seeing in front of you, as you can see, has different components, but the majority of our sales and sales taxes are the 72% of our city's budget. And so 72% comes from sales and use tax, with intergovernmental revenue being the second largest contributor. We're very fortunate to have a lot of partners in the state, the county, and our local metro districts who help us with revenue to fund capital projects. And then the remainder of our revenue is made up of licenses, fees such as building permit fees, fines, revenue from the Lone Tree Arts Center, and franchise fees. But again, you can see that sales and use tax by far makes up the bulk of our budget. And one thing that isn't shown on here, which I always like to point out, is that property taxes are not shown on this chart. Though the city residents do pay property taxes, none of the property taxes that are paid by city residents go back to the city, as the city does not assess a direct property tax. Next slide, please. So we're going to dive into our sales tax a little more. So you can see at the very top of this slide that Lone Tree's sales tax rate is 1.8125%. That is comprised of our 1.5% rate that is used for city operations, and then that differential of the 0.3125% is a temporary voter-approved sales tax increase that was used to fund the construction of the Lone Tree Arts Center, Cook Creek Pool, our tennis courts, and our park at our golf course. That amount is a temporary increase, again, that was voter approved and cannot be used for any other purpose. So the 1.5% is what we use to fund our city's operations. And you can see in the percentages below Lone Tree that all of our neighbors have sales tax rates that are a lot of the times more than double ours for operations. Next slide, please. In addition to having the lowest sales tax rate, we also do not tax as many things as our neighboring communities. As I already mentioned, the city does not have a property tax. We also do not have an occupational privilege tax or a head tax, which is a tax that is charged to employers and employees that work in a community. We also don't tax food for home consumption, and we do not tax automobiles. You can see on the chart below Lone Tree that all of our neighboring communities have a higher tax rate and at least tax 2 or more of those other things. This has served us well up to this point, but we're going to be talking to you tonight about why this has become a concern for the city. Next slide, please. Another interesting point about the city's revenue is that more than 95% of our sales and use tax revenue is generated by households outside of Lone Tree. This is due to the fact that the city of Lone Tree is a regional destination, meaning that a lot of people outside of the city come to shop, dine, and enjoy all the great amenities we have. And it makes sense that they pay for a portion of our operations due to the increased demand on our public safety and on our roads and on our city services in general. So this structure makes sense, but it is fairly unique that such a large amount comes from outside of the city. Next slide, please. So this chart shows our sales tax collection history, and it runs from 2007 through to the current year. And you can see going from left to right that over time, the city has historically had very strong sales tax collections. It had steady growth, and it would go up about 5% every year. Around 2015, looking into 2016, we started to have some concerns that our sales tax revenue seemed to be flattening some. And we didn't want to be reactionary, and we wanted to make sure that was this a new trend or was this just something that was happening that wasn't going to continue. And unfortunately, we continue to see a flattening of our sales taxes over that period of time. The reason that we saw that flattening is online shopping. And I think everyone on the call can probably attest that more packages come to your door today than ever before. The city does tax online sales, and we do get that question frequently. However, online sales for residents, it still comes to the city. So when our residents shop online or shop at our stores, we still see City of Lone Tree taxes paid. However, when our neighbors that live outside the city that used to come into the mall and now shop from home and have them delivered, they pay taxes based on where they live. And so those tax revenues stay in their communities. That has had a tremendous impact on our revenue stream and was the case even before last year, as you can see from 2015 to 2019. In 2019, we decided that we needed to start looking at things more aggressively. We completed long-term projections and started resident surveys because we knew that we were going to have continued challenges in the future. Unfortunately, then with COVID-19 hitting, everything was accelerated, and you can see the drastic decline in our sales tax revenue that occurred last year. You can see that we are projecting a slow growth this year, and we continue to assume that we will see growth every year. However, we are not going to be able to get back to 2019 levels for some time, knowing that our businesses are operating differently, people are more comfortable with online shopping, and that we have to be proactive so that we can serve the community as we have in the past. So now that we've looked at revenue a little bit, I'm going to pivot for a minute, and I want to spend a few minutes and talk about how the city has historically prioritized and spent its money. Next slide, please. So this is a similar chart, but on the expense side, that shows how the city has spent its funds. in historical years. And you can see that the three top categories are capital outlay, which is our infrastructure investments, public safety, and public works. Those three categories make up 80% of the city's budget. The other remaining 20% includes things like general government, arts and cultural, and community development. And those include things such as communications, insurance, IT costs, legal, community events, and our building department, amongst other things. But that percentage is way smaller than the 80% that goes into our core services that we provide for residents. And our expenses are always focused on supporting the city's strategic plan, which has been developed over the years through feedback from residents and city council as they adopt our budgets each year. What we have seen, though, is that our costs, and in particular our capital maintenance needs, are increasing as the city ages. Next slide, please. So I mentioned that in 2019, we had started doing long-term projections. And towards the end of last year, we updated those projections with the new impacts from COVID-19, as well as our continued trends with online shopping. This is a busy slide, so I want to orient you with what the information is in front of you. On the horizontal axis, you will see the years from 2022 through 2035. And on the vertical axis are dollar amounts. The yellow bars are revenue, the green bars are expenses, and the orange is the cumulative gap between those two over time. It is very typical for governments to have gaps between revenue and expenses from year to year, but typically there are capital reserves or other types of reserves that'll then offset those differentials based on planning for large capital expenses in the future. Unfortunately, what our picture is showing is that over time, this gap cannot be closed, and it results in a $12 million average gap annually over time. So I'll repeat that. It results in a $12 million gap. That is very concerning. Another thing I would like to highlight is some things behind the details included in the projections. First and foremost, when we did these projections, we analyzed historical trends. We also did want to take into account that we do know that new businesses will continue to invest in our community. And so there is projections for new business opportunities, as well as the growth that we anticipate on the east side of I-25. Though with new development, a lot of the revenue that comes in with new construction is one-time revenue that isn't an ongoing form of revenue over time. So those are included in those projections. Likewise, costs for maintenance and operations related to the east side of I-25 are also included in this graph. However, as most people might not be aware, when we knew that development was going to start on the east side of I-25, we secured an ongoing revenue stream of 8 property tax mills that are pledged by the Metro District on the east side of I-25 to support the growth of new residents coming into that area. So even though those costs are in here, the new revenue stream that will offset those costs is also included. So the costs showing on this screen mostly are for the existing footprint of Lone Tree. It's not caused by growth. Also, we kept our current service levels in place. We did not include enhancements, and we also included some cost projection increases based on best finance practices. All in all, though, this picture is troubling and not sustainable. And because of that, now I'm happy to hand it over to Mayor Millet for some additional perspective and to look at possible solutions.
Thank you, Kristen, for that important background information. I'm not so happy to catch that ball, but I think we need to proceed with our conversation. And perhaps the most important takeaway I'd like to leave everyone with this evening is that the City Council will always deliver a balanced budget. Ensuring the fiscal health of our community through annual budgeting and financial planning is job number one for the City Council. Obviously, we were very concerned when the current 15-year forecast was presented. Council understood that maintaining service levels and public safety at our historic levels would not be possible without increased revenues. We also recognize that extensive public outreach and input would be essential in our work towards a solution, hence the Mapping the Future initiative. City Council and the executive leadership team have connected with hundreds of residents and community and business leaders to discuss the appropriate response to the city's budget challenges. We posed a simple question: should the city cut expenses or increase revenues? First, let's consider expense cuts. Remember, Kristen let us know 80% of the city budget is devoted to public safety, public works, and capital investments. Some may suggest that these departments were specifically targeted to create some scary outcomes or inflated consequences. They question, well, why didn't council consider cutting the community development budget or the arts center budget? So let's talk about that for a second. First, I want to let you know that all city departments would experience budget cuts. But after taking into account the big three, the remaining city departments only account for about 20% of the city budget. There are simply not enough dollars there to realistically cut to the $12 million projected shortage. We could completely defund the Arts Center, pay nothing, and shutter the doors, and we would still have to cut more than $11 million from the city's budget. So unfortunately, these cutbacks must be seriously considered in these three areas. So public safety, what we'd be looking at cutting is reducing the number of officers or reducing officer training, slimming down our participation in regional crime prevention programs, continuing to delay the replacement of police vehicles or officer equipment. On the infrastructure, repair, and maintenance side, we would be looking at lower quality standards for our city road maintenance, lower maintenance standards for city facilities, reducing our storm sewer and drainage maintenance, cutting trash and recycling service for our single-family residents, and cutting traffic signal upgrades and timing improvements. As far as capital investments and planning for the future goes, we'd be looking at cuts on our traffic analyses and our road improvements. We would potentially be cutting bike and pedestrian safety enhancements. We would keep our streets safe, but we'd also have to look at cutting our congestion relief projects, and we would also limit the amount we would be able to do at the I-25 Lincoln interchange to improve our traffic flow and plan for our future. These significant budget cuts, in conjunction with cuts across all city departments, would change the look and feel of our community moving forward. The aesthetics of the city would not remain the same. Service levels would decrease and response times would increase. In many cases, these are not expense cuts, but delaying and deferring maintenance and infrastructure replacement. Our ability to attract and retain a high-quality staff will also be compromised if we are not able to offer competitive compensation packages. And after serving for 17 years with this amazing staff, I will share with all of you, we could not ask for better folks working for our community. We are very fortunate to have them. The vast majority of the folks that we connected with during our community engagement efforts indicated they understood the significant impact of online shopping on the city's budget and would prefer to see city revenues increase to maintain the quality, character, and safety of our community. So let's turn our attention to the revenue side of the equation. And please keep in mind, once again, as Kristen let us know, shopping and dining accounts for 72% of city revenues, and 95% of that is paid for by folks who live outside our city. About 13% of additional revenue comes from local government partners like our wonderful metro districts, Douglas County, and the state of Colorado. But City Council has no authority to reprogram that 13% of our budget. Those dollars must be used for specific projects, and in most cases, those funds also require a local match and expenditure of city dollars. Another important takeaway for you this evening is that any tax increase would be put to a vote of the people, and Lone Tree voters will be the decision makers on any revenue increase. So, potential options to increase city revenues include sales tax, potentially increasing our sales tax, which funds our city operations, from 1.5% to 2.5%. This rate would still be far below the majority of surrounding communities and would be equal to the lowest rate in the region. However, it would cost Lone Tree households about $7 per month. We could expand the base of what we tax, and we would look at potentially taxing things such as groceries and car purchases. And while our neighbors in Parker and Castle Rock do tax those items at a much higher rate than the city is even considering, taxing basic necessities holds very little appeal to any of us, and frankly, we didn't even try and estimate what that would cost on a per household basis. An occupational privilege or head tax, as Kristen mentioned, would require businesses and employees to remit tax to the city of about $10 per employee per month. Our neighbors in Greenwood Village, Denver, and Aurora do impose this tax, in addition to property taxes and higher sales taxes. However, head taxes hit workers and small businesses particularly hard and impede our ability to attract and retain the very businesses that fund our city operations. Also, this tax would not generate enough revenue to solve the deficit, since it would yield about $4 million per year. Property tax is another option. A city mill levy could be assessed on property owners. As Kristen mentioned, currently, property owners in Lone Tree do not pay a property tax to the city. Many other communities in this area do pay a small property tax to the communities they live in. But these taxes hit everyone's pocketbook hard. And unlike a sales tax, there is no discretion for property owners about how much they pay. Residents do have a choice when it comes to sales tax. For the most part, we decide when to dine, whether to stop for a coffee on the way to work, or whether to pick up a new outfit over at Park Meadows Mall. So it's also important to consider that we would have to assess almost 15 mills on top of existing property to make up the $12 million shortfall. The impact on the average Lone Tree household from this alternative would be over $70 a month, almost 10 times the cost to a Lone Tree family of a 1% sales tax increase. So, given these facts, you're not going to be shocked. A 1% sales tax increase was the preferred alternative to resolving the city budget issues. Increasing our city revenues would allow our community to continue forward on the same trajectory, maintaining existing service levels, public safety, and infrastructure investments. So, the next slide, please. So the benefits of a 1% sales tax increase, which I'd like to reiterate: 95% of the sales tax would be paid by folks living outside the city of Lone Tree. Our Lone Tree sales tax would remain one of the lowest in the Denver metro region. It solves the budget shortfall with the least financial impact to Lone Tree residents and businesses. Lone Tree residents would have more discretion and control over the amount of tax they paid. And again, I really do want to reiterate, taxes to fund city operations have not been increased in 25 years. That said, I know we're all concerned about the impact of any tax increase on household budgets and businesses' bottom lines. So here are some additional things to keep in mind. Next slide. As I mentioned, a 1% sales tax increase will cost households about $7 per month. Currently, the city pays for trash and recycling services for our single-family residents. That would cost residents $40 a month if that service was turned back over to the homeowners. If we do not see revenue increases, it is likely that we would have to cut that service, and the net impact on Lone Tree households would be over $30 increase to their budgets. As far as the Lone Tree business community's thoughts, let's hear directly from the largest generator of sales tax revenue in the city, Pam Kelly, the Senior General Manager of Park Meadows Retail Resort. Pam.
I believe that a sales tax increase would definitely help the businesses of Lone Tree. One of the things that we have in Lone Tree that has made many of the businesses successful is great city services. Unfortunately, you have to have additional income in order to have city services. Lone Tree has always been very prudent and very good about the way that they spend their money. So I think that fiscally it would be a good idea, and we support Lone Tree having a 1% sales tax increase.
Thanks, Pam, for your support and your longstanding partnership with the City of Lone Tree. Now, I'd like to turn to our Police Chief, Kirk Wilson, to share some thoughts from the public safety perspective. Take it away, Chief.
Thanks, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. I'd like to take a few minutes to talk about your police department, our focus, and some of the challenges we faced this past year. So over the past 5 years that I've been here, I have really come to appreciate really the high level of community support the Lone Tree Police Department receives from all its citizens. We have consistently received high marks from citizen surveys, which I believe are the result of our focus on customer service, responsiveness, and community engagement. The department was built on a foundation of community policing, which means we work with our HOAs, our businesses, our citizens to promote a safe community. We utilize volunteers to assist with extra patrolling, house watches, motorist assists, and the safety and well-being of our citizens is our number one priority. The city of Lone Tree has approximately 300,000 vehicles that travel through the city every day. We have thousands of visitors each day going to restaurants, businesses, and shopping, which can put a strain at times on public safety, on our resources. This includes hundreds of accidents a year, medical issues, incidents of theft, and a myriad of other emergency situations that demand police resources and a law enforcement response. We have faced challenges over the past year with staffing due to attrition and also having to freeze a couple of positions this past year due to budget constraints. We have managed these issues with the utilization of overtime, schedule adjusting, to ensure we always have enough public safety resources to respond in a timely manner. The residents of the city of Lone Tree expect and deserve a high level of public safety and police services. And our department, we take pride in delivering those services on a level that, quite frankly, is not really seen in other cities. We respond quickly to any type of incident, while in many cities the response would either be delayed or you would have to go online to report the incident. And it certainly isn't going to be the personal way in which the city of Lone Tree, at least the city of Lone Tree Police Department, likes to respond to and assist citizens when they're in need. So addressing budget shortfalls will help ensure that we keep our police services at that level unhindered. And finally, I want to thank all the Lone Tree residents for your support for our department, and is very much appreciated by the men and women who make up the Lone Tree Police Department. So this time I'll hand it over to Seth, our city manager. Seth Hoffman.
Thanks very much, Chief. Good evening, everybody. It's great to be here tonight. Such an important time for the city of Lone Tree. I've lived and worked in several cities in my life, but have been very lucky to live and work in Lone Tree since 2005. In fact, both of our sons, who are starting 5th and 8th grade here in just a couple of weeks, were both born at Sky Ridge and are Lone Tree natives. So as someone who's raising a family in Lone Tree, maintaining excellent public safety and services is not just professional, it's personal for me. And as Kristen demonstrated earlier, public works maintenance, operations, and capital are a very big and important part of the city budget. And I can tell you as city manager, the number one question I hear is what we're doing about traffic to make sure that people can get around the city. I will tell you that no one dislikes red lights more than me. And so we're continuing to innovate, not just by building more roads, but by maximizing the roads we already have with better traffic signal technology. We know that traffic isn't going to fix itself, so we want to make sure that we have the resources to continue to address it in the future. Similarly, our capital projects include major investments in transportation and safety improvements that not only meet our needs today, but are meant to last well into the future. And once something like that is built, we want to make sure we stay ahead of the curve with maintenance, just like you do with your home or your car. In the short term, you can definitely save money if you never change the oil in your car. But that's going to eventually catch up with you, as you know. The same is true with the infrastructure like roads as well. So we want to make sure we don't find ourselves with major repairs. And it's worth mentioning that regular maintenance is much less disruptive to you and to me and to our businesses compared to major repairs. Following on what the chief said about the personal level of service, one thing I'm most proud of as city manager is our staff's responsiveness. While we're adept at tackling big city projects, we're also able to offer small town customer service. Whether it's our commitment to quick turnaround on building permits and inspections, plowing every residential street after a snowstorm, or as Kirk mentioned, our PD's popular house watch program, we pride ourselves on top-notch customer service. And unlike most organizations these days, we always have a live person here to answer your phone calls and make sure you get directed to the right place. We want to be able to keep that level of service. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak with you tonight. Now I'm going to turn it over back to Mayor Millet.
Thanks, Seth. And again, thanks to Kristen, Chief Wilson, and to you for the great service that you all provide to the city of Lone Tree. Before we turn to questions, I'd like you all to consider one final point. Many of us think nothing about going down to Castle Rock to shop at the outlets, or going over to Parker to eat dinner, or Greenwood Village, or perhaps even going into Denver to dine. And while you're there, you're paying a sales tax rate that's more than twice what the city's is in some cases, that fund the operations of those communities. I think it is worth making a similar investment in my hometown to support the future of my community and maintain my property values. And as noted, even with this 1% sales tax increase, our sales tax rate will still be amongst the lowest on the Front Range. So now I want to turn it back to Bazi so she can facilitate the question and answer portion of this evening.
Well, thank you, Mayor Millet, and thank you, Lone Tree residents, for the questions you are submitting. A lot of good questions here. I want to remind any of you who are watching this online that you can submit your questions right beneath the video viewer where you see this screen. Type in your name, your question, hit submit, and we'll add your question to the list, and we'll do our best to get through the questions tonight. Let's start first with a question that is maybe most timely, and I see this question coming in from a few different people. So I'd like to ask a question related to COVID. And the question is that COVID is hopefully relenting, and hopefully this pandemic may be over soon, that sales tax revenues could therefore increase. Is there still a need to be greatly concerned? Mayor or Kristen, I think you could jump in on that one.
So I'll start, but I'm sure Kristen can always round out on the details. And as she noted, that really it was in 2015 that we started to see a flattening of city revenues. And we really do see a direct correlation to the flattening of those revenues and the increase of online sales. Now we know we will dig ourselves out of the hole that COVID did create, but I don't think we will be returning to the same level of personal shopping at Park Meadows that we have historically seen in the past. Prior to the pandemic, it had slowed down. And I don't know about you, but the packages delivered to my door since COVID have actually increased. So this was a problem that we had identified in 2015 and we were worried about in 2016, became even more concerned about in 2019, and really began engagement on this issue in 2019 before anyone had a hint of the COVID pandemic. The COVID pandemic didn't help.
Mayor Millet, I don't really have much to add other than, we did project coming back to pre-COVID levels in those 15-year projections. I think approximately in 2024, 2025, we do anticipate being back at pre-COVID levels, but that is built into that projection already. And you can see that alone does not close the gap over time.
Thank you. And here's another question. We've got a couple of questions that is stimulus or COVID related because of federal stimulus money. And the question from a couple of residents is about Lone Tree's share of the federal stimulus money. And with that extra funding coming in, how might that affect the need for a sales tax increase?
So the COVID funding that came into communities is based on population. The city of Lone Tree has a much smaller population. So the millions of dollars that you're hearing that are going to some of the larger cities in the Denver metro region is not what's coming to the city of Lone Tree. We have just over $2 million that we've received in COVID funds, in COVID relief funds from the federal government, which is far, far below what we saw as a deficit in our sales tax revenue in 2020.
Thanks, Mayor. We also have a couple of questions here about the money that would be raised from a sales tax increase. And there are a couple of questions about oversight of that money. If this initiative, if the sales tax increase is approved, how will the dollars be spent? And what is oversight of, how the money is being spent reported out? And what is oversight of those funds?
So the city is very proud of our fiscal stewardship, and we have long held a citizen audit committee that actually reviews the finances of this community quarterly and then our annual budgeting. We've also received awards year over year for our auditing and comprehensive fiscal analysis. I can't remember the exact names. I'd love Kristen to share them with you. But I think it's important to note that in addition to the oversight of the Lone Tree City Council, which is elected representative government, 5 individuals who review this budget with a keen eye, We also have an independent audit committee comprised of city residents who will be who always look at our finances, but look at our budgeting as well. Kristen, could you recall those names of the awards that we continue to receive for our accounting and budgeting practices?
Definitely, Mayor Millet. So the Government Finance Officers Association is a United States and Canada organization that looks at financial excellence for municipalities and governments. And we have received that award for the last 15 plus years. The whole time I've been at the city, we've gotten that every year. In addition to what Mayor Millet also mentioned about our audit committee, we do have an external audit done every year by external audit firms that come in. And in the history of my time with the city, we've also never had one internal control deficiency or audit adjustment. So we take the city's finances very seriously and also have a lot of financial information on our website under the finance department page. If anyone wants to dive into the details, there's monthly reports out there for review.
Thank you. We do have a series of questions here that maybe we can just work through now that's related to possible alternatives. Some residents have questions about what other things you have looked at and considered as a way to increase revenue. And so one of those questions coming in is, have you considered taxing food also? The thought here is that with some of the big stores like Costco or Sam's Club, that could bring in a lot of revenue. Would the sales tax include tax on food purchases?
Absolutely not. The city sales tax increase would not include a tax on groceries. Food for home consumption is how it's typically referred to. We did an overall analysis of what taxing groceries might do just to be able to respond to this question, and it would only yield about $2.2 million a year. And frankly, that really hits people in a much different way. This is a necessity. People need food. They need to buy their groceries. And while some of our neighbors do tax them, we would really like to be in a position to not do that to the Lone Tree residents and the people that shop here. Now, when folks buy liquor at Costco, or they buy a towel or a bed linens or a plant or something like that, that is not a grocery item, those are taxed, and the city does receive the sales tax revenue from those items.
Thanks, Mayor. Another question about alternative or other possibilities is a question asking about why not consider increasing taxation on certain businesses, big businesses like Schwab, for example, or even Park Meadows, that bring in a lot of traffic and that require a lot of city services.
So we can't just pick and choose which businesses we're going to tax. We couldn't say if you've got over 50 employees, you're going to pay a head tax, and if you have under that, you're not going to pay a tax. It's a tax that would be equally applied to all businesses. The other really important thing to consider is that we are a shopping, dining destination location. We want to be welcoming people into our community. When we saw the Schwab employees not in the office, we are seeing restaurant revenues declining. We are seeing retail revenue declining. They actually bring a fair amount of revenue in from shopping, dining while they're in our city. And we also are a growing city. The east side of I-25 has a downtown city center that is planned to be developed, 440 acres. We do not want to be at a competitive disadvantage to be attracting new businesses into our community. We also need to point out that the workers that are moving into those firms are probably the folks that can be buying our houses should we ever decide to sell in the city of Lone Tree. So again, I think it's important for us to welcome these businesses, to be seen as a business-friendly community, and also they'll allow them to pay their fair share when they shop and dine in our city.
In some of the questions that have been coming in, I'm seeing some concern expressed that a sales tax increase could be bad for business, concern that maybe shoppers would choose to go elsewhere. So, and one of these specifically is asking and looking at expanding the revenue base. He's interested in plans to fill vacant storefronts. And what are the plans to do that? And could the sales tax increase have any effect on that?
So we thought long and hard about that and had a lot of conversations with our business community about what their thoughts were on a sales tax increase. In fact, when this idea was first broached, one of the first phone calls I made was to Pam Kelly, the senior general manager at Park Meadows Mall, to understand if it would be a detractor for businesses coming and locating at the mall, or what she thought about in the city in general. Because our sales tax rate is so low for operations, that 1.5%, even the additional 1% makes our rate very, very low in comparison to neighbors. We are still far lower with that 1% than Castle Rock, than Parker, than Greenwood Village. So I don't know. I don't believe that we don't believe, and based on what the businesses have told us, they are supportive of this. This is a pass-through tax that is paid for by the consumer. It's not paid for by the business. So the business, it wouldn't cost the business any more in Lone Tree than it would cost the business in another city, except for the fact that in another city, they'd be paying property tax too. And Bazi, I apologize. There was another part to that question and I don't recall it. Could you refresh my memory?
So the other part to that question was just specifically about what plans are in place to help fill empty storefronts.
Yes. So the city of Lone Tree was very concerned as we've seen businesses move out of particularly our entertainment district area. So in January, the city council, with the great staff work, identified an incentive program to encourage businesses that generate sales tax to move back into the entertainment district. For those of you who may not be aware, the entertainment district is the area from C470 south to just past the city offices or the Bolero bowling alley. Hopefully you're going there. So we are offering a sales tax rebate program to encourage investment in that part of our city. We always look to partner with our businesses and look to fill empty storefronts. We're very hopeful, and we actually have seen some movement with some of the longstanding vacant properties there. And we do believe the incentive program we're offering has facilitated that. And again, hats off to Jeff Hallwell, our Economic Development Director, who did tremendous work along with our finance department to put that plan together. And really thanks to my partners on council for getting that through very quickly out to the public.
Thanks, Mayor. Now, this proposal that we're reviewing tonight is a proposal to increase revenue for the city. This question asks, what cuts are we looking at making in addition to increasing revenue or increasing the sales tax?
Well, I'm very, very proud of the fact that we have a very lean budget. When you look that only 20% of our budget is spent outside of core services, and as Kristen mentioned, included in that additional 20% are things like our insurance, our IT department, the escaping me, but just maintaining the landscaping at our business and our facilities. Our art center and our community development also actually generate some revenue. Art center obviously generates about $1 million a year, but it does cost something to operate. And our community development collects revenue through planning and development fees and planning and development fees. That's it. So we don't have a lot of fat in our existing budget. And frankly, council thinks long and hard before we approve any positions. I think it's important to reference back to the chief. We have 2 frozen positions right now in the police department, and we have 3 additional frozen positions within the administrative side of the house. Those won't be filled if we don't see additional revenues, and they will be cut. We've also pushed back on maintenance of our city facilities, and it's actually already starting to hurt us. We've had some HVAC problems because we've not been able to keep up with the proactive maintenance that we used to do. We are also seeing some challenges trying to extend the useful life of some of our police vehicles. So we have been making cuts. We've had to make cuts from COVID. The cuts that we made are deep and severely impact really our staff right now. They're working longer and harder than they ever have before. And I am so grateful to them for that, but it really is not sustainable. Again, please consider where we're spending the dollars in the city of Lone Tree. General government, which pretty much is everything, it's our legal department, beyond public works, public safety, and infrastructure, it's very low. And so we will always maintain a very lean budget, always look for partnership dollars, but there isn't that much there to cut.
Thanks, Mayor. And we've also seen a few questions related to development and developers. And the question here is, shouldn't developers be responsible for providing permanent city services, for paying more?
So I'm really glad I have the opportunity to re-emphasize this point. First and foremost, the developers do pay for all of the infrastructure. So the roads, the water, the wastewater, the storm sewer, that is all put in by the developer. And then it is turned over to the city after it is built to be maintained. When the development occurred on the east side of I-25, as Kristen mentioned, we received an $8 million pledge from the Metro District that will fund city operation and maintenance for that infrastructure that the developer paid to put in. So again, there will be an $8 million pledge as those houses and businesses go in on the east side that will cover the expenses of the new growth. There has been a core principle at the city that growth pays its own way. And in order to ensure that that happened, not only do they fund the initial infrastructure, they have pledged $8 million back to the city to fund the operation and maintenance costs associated with the added growth to our city. And that's a really important issue for folks to know. We are not looking to increase revenues to add services for new residents. We are looking to increase revenues to maintain what we have for our existing community.
We have another question here related to the overall budget and how the money is spent in the city. And this question is the sales tax increase needed to meet any economic development incentives that Lone Tree may have provided to new businesses, such as Charles Schwab and others that relocated to our community?
So the city of Lone Tree did not provide any economic incentive to Charles Schwab or Kiewit or Skyridge Hospital. We did none of that. So we are not looking for additional revenues to pay back any new businesses that came into the city. And I don't know, Seth, if you want to add any more to that. I feel like I've been monopolizing the answers tonight, so feel free to jump in and add on.
Sure, I can add a little bit to that. That is not something that that the city is in the practice of doing. What the way we're able to compete and bring in new businesses, and then obviously the high-paying jobs that we're looking for, is because of the level of service that we provide. The high-quality public safety and transportation system being, I think, chief among those. So that's what we hear about from businesses when they're looking to relocate. That's where our competitive advantage is. It's certainly not any kind of economic incentive.
And I want to tag on. Oh, sorry, Bazi, I just want to tag on a little bit to that. And Seth reminded me of an anecdote I'd love to share with the folks tonight. Prior to COVID, Seth and I had a business retention visit with the CFO of Charles Schwab. And he indicated, and it was such a lovely compliment I want to share, and it really speaks to the quality of the staff and the business environment in the city of Lone Tree. He said, Mayor, Charles Schwab does business all over the United States, and the best place they do business is in Lone Tree, Colorado. So there was no tax incentive that the city provided to Charles Schwab to come here. They came here for the very reasons that we all chose to move here. It's a great community with great people. It's safe. We've got a great transportation system, access to wonderful outdoor amenities, access to great healthcare, access to great shopping amenities, and it's just simply a nice place to be. And we want to keep it that way.
And we are seeing that in the questions coming from residents. One more question about the proposed sales tax increase that we're seeing here is, sometimes tax increases are time limited, they expire. With this proposed sales tax increase, is this temporary? Is the proposal here that this increase will last forever?
So great question, and thank you again for giving me an opportunity to convey some additional information. Yes. We are proposing a 10-year sunset on this sales tax. 10 years ago, nobody thought online shopping was going to be what it is today and would have the impact on our budget that it did. It's important to note that 1.5% sales tax really served the city well for 20 years. So I think in 10 years, and council thinks, not just me, my partners on council and I think that after 10 years, we should really evaluate, see where we are, and give the residents the opportunity to take that sales tax away or continue it depending on the circumstances.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'd like to ask, this is possibly the last question here tonight. And the question is, how can we as Lone Tree residents and as business owners help support this 1% sales tax increase?
Well, I'm happy to share that actually 2 Lone Tree residents have stepped forward to form Citizens for Lone Tree's Future. And it is a citizen advanced committee that probably will be doing some outreach. They're just forming right now. It is headed by a former Mayor Pro Tem council member and planning commissioner, Susan Squire, who has lived in this community and devoted over 19 years of her personal life to serving this community in one capacity or other. And also, and the other community member's name is Marissa Harmon. Marissa is a business owner here in Lone Tree. In addition to owning her home in Lone Tree, she owns Roots and Main Salon. And Marissa serves on our planning commission. Both of these individuals have been really engaged with the city and are really motivated to see our community continue in the same trajectory that it has. So I think the city's information and what you can do is point folks to our city website, share this information, speak to your friends and neighbors about it. But there is a citizen committee that is forming, and they will be doing their own outreach independent of the city's effort. What we will be doing at the city is providing education on mapping the future. Again, that will be on the city website till through our November potential election issue. Again, that decision has not been made. Council will be considering a ballot question at our August 17th council meeting. Again, we're still in the community information, education, and gathering feedback phase, but I think you all have a good sense of where we're leaning right now. So please keep your comments, questions going. Look to support that citizen committee if you so desire, but frankly, the best thing you can do is to educate your friends and neighbors about this important issue, point them to the city website to get the facts, and ask the questions that they need answers to support this potential increase.
Thank you, Mayor. And I do also realize that we have some residents who are submitting questions on Facebook. So we have only a few minutes left. Maybe we can squeeze in 1 or 2 questions before our time is up tonight. Again, some questions are related to other possibilities or additional possibilities to increase revenue. This one asks, would the city of Lone Tree ever think of purchasing the CU South Denver building as part of the art and cultural events to help bring in revenue?
So great question. That is a wonderful amenity. We have to thank the Linegar family for the generous donation of that facility to Douglas County. At this point, the city is not looking to expand its arts center or our arts programming. So that would not be an option for the city of Lone Tree. But I will share with you all, I think it's an important asset that we should look long and hard at before we lose it. I think it's important to have higher ed. CU has such a phenomenal reputation right here in our community. So I know there are some folks looking about how we can maintain that as an educational asset. That's what it was created for, and I think it makes good sense to continue it there.
And Mayor, you have addressed this, but maybe this would be a good opportunity to help people understand where they can continue to get questions answered that they may have, ones that we can't get to tonight. So this question is there currently an initiative to educate the public about what's at stake, about if the sales tax increase fails? Some are very concerned about what they could lose.
So again, I would point everyone to the City of Lone Tree website /mapping the future. It is a phenomenal site developed by our city staff that really goes through the presentation that we shared with you this evening. It shows the revenue projections, it shows our expenses, and it kind of leads you through the information I shared, and then also provides an opportunity for you to ask questions. It also includes, or will shortly include, a frequently asked questions tab that you can click on to understand what other folks may have asked or what we're hearing from a lot of people. So that is continuing to be updated. Again, Mapping Our Future on the city's website. Please check it out. Staff, once again, has done tremendous work bringing forth all of the information that folks need to make an educated decision.
Thank you again, Mayor Millet. Thank you all of the city leaders who have joined us tonight and all of the residents who have been part of this discussion. Again, we haven't been able to get through all of the questions. It's wonderful to see that you have such an engaged community and so many residents who do want to put their questions forward. So once again, as the mayor mentioned, cityoflonetree.com, Mapping Our Future, where you can get more information. You can also share that with your neighbors who couldn't be here tonight. That's one way that anyone who wants to support this proposal could spread the word. Mapping Our Future is again the name of this public engagement effort about the city's financial future. And again, there's an opportunity there to submit your questions and to share any additional feedback that you would like to share with city leaders. Thanks so much for joining us. Have a good night, everyone.